Hello, this is Todd Luck. And so what do you get when you mix an ape-man with cowboys in the Arizona desert? Well, of course you get Tarzan and the Forest of Stone by Jeffrey Marriott. And so this is the latest Edgar Rice Burroughs universe novel. And so this follows the continuity of the original novels and counts as official canon. This is not related to the Swords of Eternity arc that I've been reviewing. So this is a standalone novel that is easily accessible to new readers and doesn't really tie into anything else. So I want to thank Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated for sending me this novel, and they actually sent me the collector's edition. So let's talk about that real fast. There's quite a few different ways that you can get their novels, and there's of course an audiobook, which is wonderful, but if you're looking for something to actually read, it is available digitally as a Kindle book, and you can get that for only $5.95. If you get the book from EdgarRiceBurroughs.com, you get this wonderful trading card of La of Opar. Now, La does not appear in the novel, but why not have a card of her? This is from Joe Jusko's cover of Return of Tarzan, and it looks wonderful. And so I'm just going to hold up some different novels they've put out as examples. So you can also get soft cover, and so this is the same size and contents as the hardcover. And for this particular novel, their softcover would run, I believe it's $18.95. Keep in mind, these prices are probably influenced by inflation. And you can also get their regular hardcovers. For this particular novel, the hardcover will run you about $33.95. And this is what the hardcover looks like if you take off the jacket. And this is consistent with how Burroughs novels have been put out in the past. This is a Mars novel from the 1970s. And then there's the collector's edition for $50, which is your most expensive option. It's labeled on the back there, collector's edition. And so it'll come with this nifty envelope, which according to the return address comes from Pellucidar. And so that's probably worth it all by itself, because can you imagine how much the postage is to send an envelope from the Earth's core? And so in the envelope, you'll get the trading cards, and you'll get the one that comes with all the print editions I showed you, and along with this one that is exclusive to the collector's edition. And it'll also come with a book plate, and this has the signature of the author and the cover artist and the frontispiece artist, and also Edgar Rice Burroughs as well. And so this is essentially a sticker. And so you'll stick that on the front page of the novel. And this is a standard thing for collectible books. You can decide not to stick it on there too, if you want to. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Those of you who are into this type of stuff with book plates, let me know. Do you guys actually stick them on the book, or do you just kind of keep them with the book? How do you do it? And one more thing that makes the collector's edition unique is if you take off the jacket here, you get this gorgeous cover underneath. It's nice and glossy. And it's really beautiful. I really love this. I mean, I don't know if you would ever want to display it without the actual painted cover, but if you did, I think this is a beautiful option. And so here's everything you get, and the collector's edition is limited to only 200 copies, so you're also paying for the rarity of it. So, you know, it's up to you if this is worth $50, but if you're into collectible books, this looks really cool to me. So let's talk about the novel itself. So your reaction to the cover, just like everything else in this novel, is going to depend on how much you like the subject matter. I think it's well rendered, and I think it tells a very, very clear story. I think you automatically know what you're getting, right? You can tell this is Tarzan in the middle of the desert with a horse. I think we get a very, very clear message. This is Tarzan in Arizona. The novel also has this absolutely beautiful frontispiece, and it's the only piece of artwork in the novel, but it's quite nice. And so, as you can tell, this is a little bit of a different Tarzan story, right? Tarzan is not in Africa. He never appears in the jungle. His supporting cast is not here. This is Tarzan in the Arizona desert. And so in the novel, Tarzan is leaving Hollywood, and it begins with a very amusing taxi ride to Edgar Rice Burroughs' ranch where he does lunch. And it's a great first chapter, a lot of bits of humor, a lot of bits of characterization thrown in there. And then he gets on a train, and of course, in true Edgar Rice Burroughs fashion, he does not reach his destination. So the train is attacked by these people dressed as cowboys who cause a train to wreck, and they steal a statue of a horse, which is quite valuable. And of course, they also kidnap a girl. And so Tarzan walks off into the desert to track down the bad guys. There's also a hired killer named Max the Axe Meacham who's thrown into the mix. And so Tarzan is kind of in half the novel, and then half of it is kind of dealing with other characters. And that way it's very close to Burroughs, right? He would do that in a lot of his novels where you'll be following the other characters in that novel as much as you would Tarzan. And of course, he does eventually catch up to the bad guys, and it gets quite violent. You know, some Tarzan novels are more violent than others, but this one is definitely on the higher end of that. It once again feels like he's trying out his Mortal Kombat finishing moves on them. And so the Forest of Stone referred to in the title is actually a real-life attraction in Arizona called the Petrified Forest, where the wood has turned to stone over the millennia. The author does a great job describing it, but I don't think words, no matter how good, can do it justice. But there's a lot of visual reference you can find for it online. However, I recommend waiting until after you read the novel, because Tarzan doesn't know what a petrified forest looks like, and I would recommend being surprised along with Tarzan when you finally get there in the novel and find out what it really is like. This is not a continuity-heavy story. This isn't filled with references and Easter eggs. There is a reference to a Sheriff John Slaughter and a Apache Kid early on, but those are actually real-life historical figures. Those are not actually novel characters, if you can believe it. I would love to have a sheriff named Slaughter. However, there is one reference at the beginning that will probably mystify the uninitiated. So Tarzan is leaving Hollywood after stabbing a lion to death on a movie set. And so weirdly enough, there's no annotation or anything to let the reader know what's going on there. But if you look on the online solicitations for this novel, it will tell you that this is a direct follow-up to Tarzan and the Lion Man. And so just to give you a little bit of context, Tarzan and the Lion Man by Edgar Rice Burroughs is a novel about this film crew that goes down to Africa to shoot a movie about a Tarzan-like character called the Lion Man. And of course, in true Burroughs style, they get in all kinds of trouble, and after many long, strange adventures, Tarzan saves them. But he becomes curious about this Hollywood place they keep talking about. And so at the end of the novel, Tarzan goes to Hollywood to see what it's like. And of course, Hollywood being Hollywood, everyone wants to put him in a movie. And so he ends up getting a bit part in a Tarzan movie. And so the lion on set gets out of control, and Tarzan actually has to stab it to death in order to save the lead actor. The filmmaker is not happy that Tarzan killed his best lion and fires him on the spot, and so Tarzan, being fed up with Hollywood, goes to a receptionist, and the last line in the novel is him asking for the shortest route to Africa. And that's where this novel, Tarzan and the Forest of Stone, picks up. You don't need to have read Tarzan and the Lion Man to appreciate this new novel, but if you ever do want to read that one, it's going to be in the next batch of Edgar Rice Burroughs authorized library novels that they're working on, and so I'll have a Joe Jusko cover and archival material in the back. And if you do read Tarzan the Lion Man, I do recommend familiarizing yourself with the Tarzan movies that came out up to that point when Burroughs was doing that novel, because Tarzan the Lion Man is a very meta work. It's filled with all kinds of references to Tarzan movies. So if you familiarize yourself with those movies and how they were made, you'll enjoy it on a completely different level. This, however, is not a meta work. This is a very straightforward, simple action story, and it's short too. It's only 126 pages. The chapters are short, and so it's great for someone like me who doesn't have a lot of time to read. And what the novel sacrifices in complexity and depth from the short length of it, it makes up for in the intensity and the focus that this novel has. And I found it to be a satisfying mix of elements of Western crime and just Burroughs novels in general. And actually, I was surprised to see that the crime seemed to me to feel like the most prominent thing in here. It really felt like a Sin City story to me. And if you don't know, Sin City is this series of fantastic comics and movies by Frank Miller. And so, you know, a tough guy who walks into the desert to trail some criminals who've kidnapped a girl is a absolute Sin City story. I'm just debating whether Frank Miller would have had the hero be Dwight or Marv in this one. And so taking the character out of his element like this is going to make this a hard sell for a lot of readers, myself included. But having read it, I'll say that this feels like Tarzan. And I think a lot of the Tarzan stories that we've seen outside of Burroughs that have tried to take him out of his element and put him in a completely different place and do something different with him, it wasn't really the lack of jungle or the lack of animals that made the story suck. It just was the fact that the stories just weren't very well done, right? This is a well done story. This feels like Tarzan. He's just in a different setting. He's just in a different type of wilderness, right? He's still out there in the wilderness. It's just a barren wilderness as opposed to the lush jungle filled with life. And he still has his jungle-like abilities, his tracking abilities. He still can go medieval on the bad guys with a hunting knife. All the stuff that you've come to associate with Tarzan, he's just doing it in a drier climate. But if you're looking for a meatier, more traditional Tarzan experience, there's Tarzan Battle for Pellucidar. I've reviewed that novel, and it does take place in the jungle world at the Earth's core called Pellucidar, and it has monsters and dinosaurs and introduces Tarzan's kick-ass granddaughter Suzanne and moves the mythos forward. So there's that if you want that. And then if you want just traditional Tarzan stories set in Africa, there's Tarzan The New Adventures, which reprints the online comic strips by Roy Thomas. And so that came out recently. And then in the back of here, along with Jane Porter Comics, they're also coming out with a Tarzan and the Jaguar Sun graphic novel. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And one nice extra they do put in the back of this novel to kind of compensate for its length is they do put in a chapter from the Victory Harbin novel that's coming up. So that gives you a preview of Victory Harbin Fires of Halos. And that will wrap up the Swords of Eternity super arc. And I'm really looking forward to that one, but that one's in the works. So I think if you can go into this with an open mind, you'll find a short but satisfying ride. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want them to do this with every Tarzan novel, but I don't think that's the intention. I don't think there's any market for, you know, a series of Tarzan novels based on U.S. tourist attractions. I don't think anyone's going to buy Tarzan and the Biggest Ball of Twine in Minnesota or something like that. But every once in a while, doing something different is good. All right, like and subscribe for more videos. And until next time, see ya.